Welcome to the May 11th episode of Reactive Consciousness, our in-depth podcast about what happened this week in pop culture. I am your host, Lotus Prince. Vice the Bold is, oh man, he's still fired. It's still happening. So I am Lotus Prince, and this is...
I'm PyroJackFrost.
And OldManStompy, your guest artist for this.
Oh yeah.
This episode.
So, yeah, here we are with our topical podcast. So for the first segment, I believe, Pyro, you wanted to kick this one off?
Yeah, so I mentioned on Corrective Consciousness that I started watching Kamen Rider again. I mentioned that when I was in college, I don't want to say that I watched a lot of it, but I was really into it. I watched, my friends showed me Kamen Rider Kabuto, which was very much back to basics with, like, insect-themed Kamen Riders, and that got me really wanting to watch some more. And then I watched Blade and Fies. So Blade is a playing card themed Kamen Rider where each of the main Kamen Riders has a suit, and when they beat the enemies, who are the values, I guess you could say, of cards, that determines the move that they can use. Because the enemy, so they defeat an enemy, it turns into a playing card that they then get, and then when they slot it into their weapon, they can do a different move based on which number they slot in.
That sounds fun.
It's actually one of the best Kamen Riders, actually.
Sounds like Persona.
It actually reminds me...
But no, it's definitely the best Kamen Rider.
Well, it reminds me a little bit of O's, where you keep just adjusting the stuff in your suit and getting different abilities as such.
Well, a lot of Kamen Riders do stuff like that, actually. It's to sell toys, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I watched Fies, which is a phone-based one. Fies, which actually is play on words in a way. It's like phi, like the Greek letter phi, but also fies mean like fives, like the plural of 1 5.
Sure.
Because he hits 5 5 5 and puts the cell phone in his belt, and that transforms him into Kamen Rider.
Yeah, again, it's like O's. It's 3 O's.
Yeah. And actually, it's called O's in Japan. I don't know if you knew that. It's Kamen Rider O's.
What is?
The one that you're talking about.
No, I know.
Okay, no, because some people say like O.
No. Actually, one of the number tropes that really threw me was Galaxy Express 999. In Japanese, they always call it the Galaxy Express 39, and that threw me off for quite a while at first. And I'm like, oh god.
So I remember why I wanted to watch Kamen Rider again. So the story goes back. Let's time travel to like a week ago when Bandai Namco, they have this set of lines of figures called Tamashii Nations, and they had an exhibit in New York that I went to check out, and I believe I saw like a Kamen Rider figure, and I'm like, Kamen Rider, I haven't watched that in a while. Those figures are kind of cool. So I went home and I started looking up Kamen Rider stuff again and wasting as much time as one normally does when they watch a superhero movie. They're like, what were these villains that were in this movie? What were they actually like? Oh, who's this other villain that I have never heard of before? 2 hours later, oh, cool, who's this other superhero? Etc.
Yeah.
So I was looking at all the different Kamen Riders and trying to figure out which one to watch because I kind of wanted to watch one again. And I chose Gaim, which Gaim, and I don't know if the word means anything, but basically this is the fruit-themed Kamen Rider. So the way it works is there's this like other world, and to sum things up, they have these locks, which they call lock seeds, and when you put the lock on the belt, a giant fruit comes out of the sky and lands on their head and transforms into armor.
Actually, wait, I have a quick question, by the way, about the other worlds. it isn't like mirror image, is it?
I
don't remember if that was the case.
I don't think I'm only on episode 4, so
Okay.
you might know a lot more. Did you finish watching it?
No, I don't know Gaim. I just know that it is the fruit one with an otherworld.
Okay. Yeah, and you mentioned, or at least tried to mention on Corrective Consciousness, that this story was created by the same guy who made Madoka, and I believe there's one other anime, but it's that same guy. It's definitely not as dark as Madoka. I've never watched Madoka, but I do know this dark as hell storyline.
Yeah, Madoka
as far as
gets
I can tell, this
messed up.
Kamen Rider is not dark. But,
I mean, the one part of Madoka that has a lot of fruit in it is like the least dark part of the series.
Actually, well, no. The reason I mentioned Madoka is that this guy really has a thing for the otherworld concept. You know, Gaim came from. I mean, it's all the same guy, so I can't say it came from Madoka. But the same guy who did Gaim did Madoka, and I don't know about anime, but he did the visual novel Saya no Uda, where you go into a really disgusting, corrupted, like fleshy otherworld. But all of this stuff, it's a little ironic because Gaim came after Madoka, but Madoka itself is basically the magical girl anime adaptation, even with some plot points of Kamen Rider Ryuki. That's where it all got started, where you go into
and actually I was going to say that whether or not he got inspiration from Madoka, he really did get a lot of ideas from Ryuki, because Ryuki took the whole Kamen Riders fighting against each other and going into a mirror world.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Gaim's alternate world is a mirror world. I don't know if that's going to be what happens eventually, but I do know that it really took a lot of inspiration from Ryuki, because there aren't really many villains other than other Kamen Riders in this one.
Yeah, it's come full
Whereas
circle.
most Kamen Riders, there might be an evil Kamen Rider, but all the other ones are fighting against this other set of villains.
Well, that was what was so cool about Ryuki, is that usually with Kamen Rider, one rider has different power-ups to his suit that turn him all sorts of different colors. But as you say, there may be the one helper rider or the one evil rider, but Ryuki was special in that a rider was one color, but there were like 5 or 6 different riders, and you didn't know how their dynamics were going to play out. So there was a not really evil rider, but very self-centered, and I guess I'll help you if I have to. There was a straight-up evil one who died off really quickly because he was just introducing the concept of how the world worked. There's an evil one who lasts a lot longer, who's terrifying, like, etc., etc.
Yeah, and I haven't watched Ryuki, so I'm not sure if what I'm about to mention is similar to it at all, but one cool thing that Gaim does is each of the riders has their own base state, let's say. So the main character is Kamen Rider Gaim, the second main character is Kamen Rider Baron, then there's other ones, and they all have a general theme, you could say, where most of Baron's transformations are like medieval style equipment, and most of Gaim's is Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another character who's mainly Chinese equipment. But the one cool thing is, like, their lock seeds aren't specific to their suits. So if Gaim took the banana lock seed from Baron, he would get the banana armor.
Oh, that
basically
changes things up then.
Yeah, so each Kamen Rider has their base state. So he'd be Kamen Rider Gaim, and then his fruit arms. So his main armor is orange arms. He also has pine arms, which is pineapple, and then Ichigo arms, which is strawberry.
Actually, that reminds me of O's, where everyone was after everyone else's coins to change their selves.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know if they're actually after each other's lock seeds, but they're just like, at sometimes, I mean, we haven't got to this point yet, I just know because of the figures. But at some point, they do start changing lock seeds. Like, one might be stolen from a guy, or one guy might let another one borrow his for some reason, etc., etc.
Well, that's really clever, because Ryuki was a little bit simpler than that. Pyro, do you know anything about Madoka?
I have never watched anything about it.
Okay, because, like I said, it is really straight out of Ryuki. But the basic idea, I'm not going to go into a whole song and dance about this, but with Madoka, there are these supernatural beings called witches that are just causing havoc in the world, but no one can see them because they're in this other world. So what happens is this like super being, this like superior being that takes the form of this little cat, shows up to people who are in trouble or really have this strong desire. And this person's like, you look like you could potentially be powerful. how about you make a wish and I will grant it, and then you will become like this magical girl who I'm not going to tell you, but you're actually going to be pretty much bound to me and forced to do your job forever to stop these witches. But their powers end up being themed based on the wish they made in a way. So like there's like, yeah, I'm not going to go into specifics because that gets into plot spoilers. But Ryuki was like that, where this one guy, it was kind of like he just shows up and offers these blank cards to people who would become Kamen Riders, and he's like, whoever's last standing gets the prize, and you don't know what the prize is, but it's like, you've got my attention, mystery man. So he would give you this card and the Kamen Rider suit, and when you transformed, you would usually go into this mirror world. You can't stay in the mirror worlds too long. It has a draining effect on you, but there are monsters inhabiting the mirror world. So the main Kamen Rider we follow, the red one, sees like this giant Chinese dragon, like the long dragon, and he's like, oh geez! So he uses his card and he captures it. So now he's the dragon-themed Kamen Rider, and that's just how it is. You know, no trading. He's the dragon-themed Kamen Rider. Now the catch, the part they didn't tell you, just like Madoka, is that like, by the way, your monster's hungry. So every so often, you'd better go into the mirror world and kill monsters, because if you don't, then your own monster will eventually consume you. So, like, basically, either the Kamen Riders are going to have to fight each other until only one of them is left alive, or you are going to have to fight monsters until the day you die, or else the day you die will come very prematurely. It's a really interesting plot, and it, like, literally forcibly drives the story forward.
Yeah, I think, like, one of the things I liked about Blade and Faiz in a way is, I mean, Kamen Rider itself is very much a children's. One joke I used to make was Power Rangers is for kids, and then Kamen Riders, when they grow up and they're no longer kids, they become teenagers, they want to watch something that's a little bit darker, so they watch Kamen Rider.
It does get darker.
That's not necessarily true, but I feel like Kamen Rider is usually best when it has a good mix of dark stuff and humor.
Yeah, O's had a pretty good blend, I feel. I think there were some more comical Kamen Riders, but, like, Kuga from the 90s was pretty damn serious. Like, for almost all of it. The basic premise of that one is monsters were just literally just going around and killing random humans and keeping score. Like, those are the bad guys. Like, stop them. Like, it's just like, oh, geez.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember much of the themes of the ones that I watched, but, Gaim is pretty fun. I chose that one because, one, I heard that it was the best, and two, I really like the idea of the whole fruit armor. Because some of the other ones, just as an example, there's one that's the newest one is based off of video games, but I heard it was actually not that great. There's rumors that the next one, the one that's going to come out, I guess, next year, is sushi-based.
Huh.
There's one that's ghost-based. So each of the Kamen Riders has like they're ghost hunters, and the ghosts that they capture help them with their power. There's one that's, I don't know what O's theme is. What is O's theme?
O's is actually really interesting. O's is greed. What happens is that these monsters resurrect, and they're all not with their full forms, because the coins that I told you about that the Kamen Riders use to transform are all pieces of these monsters. And these guys are badasses. Like, you can't beat them now. But you use some of their coins to power yourself up. Like, you can use, like, the green, the red, and the blue, or maybe the yellow, whatever coin for the Kamen Rider to do his main, like, tricolor theme. But you can do, like, if you get 3 in a row and match them, you can get, like, a super powered form of the Kamen Rider. But each of the monsters wants their coins back to become part of themselves. But there's also this battle between various humans who want to get the coins. So the whole thing is greed-based. And it's fascinating in that regard, because Kamen Riders gain and lose coins to the monsters all the time. And you actually really don't know where this is going to go.
Do the monsters have a theme? Like, are they all based on, like...
They're various animals. I guess you would say, in terms of transformation, it's animal-based. So, like, the gray guy is an elephant, the yellow one is a cat, etc. The blue one's some kind of, I forgot what kind, but some sort of aquatic creature. So it's animal-based in that sense. But I guess the theme of the series would be greed.
Well, usually when I say theme, it's like the transformations. What's the theme of the transformation?
Yeah, it's animals. It's animals.
And then like their Kamen Rider Drive is car based. Kamen Rider 4s is space based. Den-O is train based.
Oh, that's right.
They all have themes. Some of them are done well. Some of them are not done well.
Kuga, I don't even know really has a theme. I think it's just powering up your suit.
What?
I don't even know if Kuga really has a transformation theme.
I think that was before. So
yeah.
I believe it was...
Kuga's from the 90s.
Kabuto was the first one... Not Kabuto. Blade, I believe, was one of the first ones of the new era where they started really theming monsters or transformations based on some...
Okay, because otherwise it was like purple is the super strong one. Like that's kind of there you go.
Yeah, so they're interesting, I would say, and again they're meant for kids, teenagers, or whatever. But I've always loved the idea of transformations. I mean, that might be part of why I like Transformers. One thing that turns into something else. I always like the whole I love watching transformation themes from Kamen Rider, like that being like the videos. Like I could just watch a whole YouTube video of just all their transformations, and then like stand up and go like Henshin, and
yeah,
in my own little world, hope I transformed into a Kamen Rider.
Well, you need a build for that.
So I guess that's when we do our live Corrective Consciousness stream. That will be a segment on it. Is
yes,
me doing all the transformations. I actually. It's funny, when I was first really into this in college, I was so into it. Luckily, I was not too free with my money, but I'm like, I really want to buy a Kamen Rider suit. How much does that cost?
Probably a ton.
And then I saw it cost like $2,000,
yeah.
and I'm like, that's not that bad.
I used to think the same thing about DDR machines. It was like $1,500 for a crappy one. Like, I don't know. I didn't like that was at the that college at the time in life when you could start thinking about making large purchases for yourself. So things like sunk costs and like maintenance costs. Like you haven't learned about that yet, really, unless you're really really smart, or you had to face that when you were younger, or like your parents taught you about it. So like as an you think of it as a one-time investment, and you're like, that sounds so cool. I just want to own this.
Yeah, but then like two things stopped me. One, because it was $2,000. Two, I'm like, this means I actually have to work out a lot to actually be able to look good in the skin-tight suit.
Yeah, it doesn't come with like muscles, like a muscle suit, like a Hollywood costume.
I don't think it did.
Damn.
Like my like not really thinking too much into this potential purchase was going to be like before I knew about round one, like the Silent Hill arcade machine. I'm like, I'm never going to play this game unless I buy it, but like it's extremely expensive and God only knows how much it costs to ship an entire arcade machine from Japan. It's like, no thanks.
Yeah, it was actually like that when I went to Japan. I played Otomedius, which if you don't know is the Moe themed Gradius game.
Okay.
And I played that a lot. Like my friend and I would go to an arcade at least once a day sometimes, and I would play that. Like I bought a Konami card specifically to play that. And I'm like, now that I'm gone from Japan, I have all this progress. I have to buy one of these machines. And then I looked at how much it would cost, and I'm like, I can't buy one of these machines.
Time for another trip to Japan.
It's a good thing round one is only, like an hour and a half away from where you used to live, and now it's like 3 hours away.
Yeah.
Although there is one opening on Long Island, so you might have an easier time.
There is?
Yeah.
Do you know where in Long Island?
Broadway Mall, I think it's called. Sometime
I'm gonna have to look into
within
that.
a year or so. So you're much more conveniently located once that arrives.
Okay. But yeah, so the other thing I wanted to say about Kamen Rider is I actually bought a toy. I fell for it.
Not a suit, just a toy.
Not a suit. I bought one of the Bandai Namco action figures of Gaim. So, but yeah, I mean, really, when you think about it, Power Rangers, Kamen Rider, they're all just Transformers. They're all just trying to sell toys. And
Kamen Rider's really heavy-handed with it too.
Yeah, actually, especially in Gaim, because one cool thing about it, but also, in a way you could say annoying thing, is every episode there's this cool new thing that you haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Or
they really push it hard.
Merchandising speak, hey, there's this one cool new thing that they're going to see that they're going to want to buy.
No, you know what my favorite is in O's, the other Kamen Rider, like the assistant guy, his belt is like Gachapon themed. So
Oh, really?
Yeah, his belt looks like one of those Gachapon toys. So it really, honestly, his transformation sequence is cool, but the sound effects kind of take you out of it because because he comes up looking badass. He's like the laid back cool guy, so he'll just be like henshin, like he'll just say it, so like henshin, and it shows his belt coming up, and then it makes that like the sound you pop open the ball. It's just like, oh geez, like if only that one sound weren't there, it would be so cool. But yeah, I'm sorry, OldManStompy, you were gonna say something?
No, I was just gonna.
I will say that I like the idea that there's a new thing in every episode. I never really watched Kamen Rider at any point besides like watching some videos that show up on my Facebook feed, but I did watch a lot of Power Rangers for the first several seasons, and like every time there's a new season of one of the Sentai shows, you get the new Zord or you get the new transformation sequence, and it's always really cool. I remember watching the Thunder Zords in the second season of Power Rangers with my cousin and being like, oh my god, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I have to go buy this place now. Even though like the special effects were still like pretty shitty, they were good for a network television show. But if you watched it every day, every episode for like 40, 50, 60 episodes, it got a little old, like watching the Sailor Moon transformation sequences. Like they look cool, but eventually it starts to wear on you a little bit, and so they replenish it every season. But if there's a new thing every episode, it really wears off. So like I'd still want to go out and buy the toy.
Oh, dude,
I would recommend if you guys get a chance later on, just look up Kamen Rider, any of the Kamen Riders, but I would say, because I've been mentioning it, look up Kamen Rider Gaim transformation, and it's amazing because it's cool because it's a transformation sequence, but it's also very silly because so the fact that a giant fruit falls on their head, then you look inside the fruit and their mask appears.
Nice.
And then the better part though is not just that, but when the transformation finishes, like juice, like not like tons of juice, like little droplets of juice like pop out of them.
Yes. By the way, I actually mentioned regarding toys, Kamen Rider O's I think could potentially sell the most Kamen Rider, like the character toys, because like I said, the 3 coins affected legs, arms, and head, so you could actually like get combinations of. But
the thing is, they would really only sell the ones in the show, so even if there were.
No, that is true, but I think they might have even been interchangeable. So so maybe you would sell the same amount of Kamen Riders as like any other show, but I guess theoretically you could swap them. If I forgot if the toys were capable of that, but there was like a large amount of combinations because there were like 4 or 5 colors, and you have 3 coins.
It's kind of like when you think about it in Gaim, there's let's say 5 Kamen Riders, but there's let's say 8 different arms, so that's 40 combinations.
Yeah, it's insane.
But in terms of the Tamashii Nation ones, they're only going to have, like, the armor isn't interchangeable, I believe, but they have cheaper toys where it is.
Okay.
So it depends on how much money you're willing to spend on a figure. If you rather have the cool ability to interchange the armor, or if you'd rather have a really nice figure with that still is very posable.
The interchangeable ones do tend to have to be cheaper, right? Because they wear down really quickly if you keep swapping them in and out, right?
Yeah.
And while you're at it, looking at the transformation sequence, look at the finishers, because for Gaim it's even better. There's one, it's called like pineapple squash, and so the Rider kick has been a big thing in Kamen Rider, and this version of it, he basically kicks the monster and kicks a hole through it, and then you see the monster and it's a pineapple.
That's awesome.
like cutting a pineapple slice.
I'm used to them just exploding.
So I guess a question that I'll ask for people like me and possibly some of our listeners who might be in the same situation. For those of us who have never watched a single Kamen Rider series, if we want to watch a series, which one do you think we should start with?
So I would recommend probably Blade, and then after that would be Kabuto, and probably Gaim.
Okay. Based on what Mr. Ryu's the guy who introduced me to Kamen Rider. So based on what he says, because he's watched far more series than I have, I don't know if his opinion would have changed since we started, but of the ones that I've seen at least, O's is very accessible. Because the 3 I've seen were O's, Ryuki, and Kuga. And Ryuki, Mr. Ryu said, was kind of okay. I enjoyed it. It's like the Madoka theme, so it does get kind of oppressive at times, and Kuga is just straight up, like, gritty. So O's is the most friendly to me, but even Mr. Ryu said O's is a really good starting point, just in general. And O's, as we established at the beginning, is the capital letter O 3 times, like O.
Yeah. I've seen you guys talk about it in the past, and like I've also watched Madoka like on its own. And I thought it was enjoyable, so I'm not necessarily looking to watch or not watch something just because it might be a little gritty. Like that's totally fine by me.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what kind of attitude you're looking for. O's, I don't know, O's just seems fun, and they actively have to explain how the mechanics work because it's a unique situation for everybody, so that helps as well. Not to mention, one thing I didn't say is that there's all sorts of different combinations of coins that these guys can put in their belts, but if they do the special combination, which is these 3 particular colors, which is what our hero usually goes with, there's a little theme that sings along with it, and if he does 3 in a row of any particular color, like the theme that comes with the 3 different ones is like a quick little like jingle, but if he ever gets 3 in a row of a particular color, each of those has its own particular full-on theme song, which makes things rather entertaining. Because normally Kamen Riders transform and like fight music plays or something, but like these actually have theme songs, which is kind of interesting.
Well, it's kind of like in Kamen Rider Hibiki, where the whole thing is music based.
Oh, nice.
In a way, but it's not a good one.
So,
It's not that great. It's not
do
bad,
the series
but it's not that
do the series like lead into each other in any way, or are they all can they all be watched standalone?
Not at all.
Yeah, they're not canonical, but you know, back decades ago, it was kind of like with Power Rangers, they contrive a way in the American version to make each series lead into the other, but really they're different Sentai series. In Kamen Rider, it was like that, where it's just like, this series is over. Tune in next month, we'll have another Kamen Rider series for you. Now, there's no canonical connection, but maybe in one of the last episodes, or in that series' movie or something, the Kamen Rider might be doing something, and then, like, I remember at the end of... I guess it was O's. There was like the Kamen Rider from the next series, the space themed one, like fours. Oh yeah, because they're counting. That's right. There's 2, 3, 4. But the O's Kamen Rider's fighting the movie's villain, and then the fours Kamen Rider just shows up and he's like, "I'll help you," and he uses these weird techniques that they don't explain because you're gonna find that out in the next series. But that's it, you know. Or like at the end of. And also at the end of the O's TV series, it shows the guy in his civilian form just walking by like, yeah, we saved the day. And the camera focuses conspicuously on some student from some different school kind of hanging out. And it's like, oh, is he going to be the next main character? Yes, he is. But there's no actual story connection. It's more like a little nod, like the series connect sort of really a little bit. It's kind of like to hype you for the next one. But you don't ever need to have watched one series to understand another.
Yeah, and then the only other time that they would actually exist together and actually fight for a longer period would be like the movies or
the special crossovers. Yeah.
The whole point of it is to see multiple Kamen Riders fighting with or against each other.
Yeah, Power Rangers did that one episode, Forever Red, where it's like every Red Ranger up to the time. Like that's freaking cool. Like that's awesome, and it's also a great way to advertise the show because like. You haven't watched all of these. There's been over 1,000 episodes. So it's like, look at this weird power. What's that one? Maybe I'll look into that series later. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so, I mean, unless you guys have any other Kamen Rider stuff you want to ask about, I was going to move into the fact that Free Comic Book Day was on Saturday. And this is only my second one. So the one that I went to last year, it was a small shop that was kind of roughly within walking distance from me, and they just had piles of the free comic books, but you could only pick 3, so you had to have really know which ones you want. Whereas this year I went to Midtown Comics, which is, if you people are unaware, it's a pretty big comic store in New York City. I went to the one in Times Square. The good thing is, outside of the doors, they just have a truck and they bag a select, like, the comics, the free ones, the exclusive ones to the store, and just you get them. So that's good because you don't have to choose which ones you want. But the bad thing is, I think they have a lower selection of the non-exclusive ones. So I didn't get there until 11 or so, and they only had those 4 exclusives when there were, like, let's say 20 comics available on Free Comic Book Day. But if you wait, I think they might already be out, or you might have to wait till next week. If you go on any site that you can download comics, you can usually download them for free too. So
Nice.
It's more if you wanted a physical version of them.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a pretty big like cross-promotional deal. Like, it didn't occur to me that Free Comic Book Day was as big of a deal as it was until I noticed that, like, all the major Cartoon Network shows that have ancillary comic book series, they were advertising the Free Comic Book Day special issues that you're supposed to go pick up, to get everything that has to do with the show, things like that.
Yeah, I actually, in a way, I enjoy Free Comic Book Day because free comics, but at the same time, it's annoying because the ones that are pushed the most are series that everyone's probably going to hear of. Like, the ones that were pushed for Midtown Comics were, like, 2 DC comics and, like, 1 Marvel comic, or the other way around. And it's like, I don't really care about those, personally. And even if I did care about those, I'm going to buy them anyway. Like, most people who are into DC and Marvel are into it. I'd rather get more of the unknown comics or the lesser-known comics.
Yeah, I haven't purchased a lot of comics for any reason in many years.
Same.
My dad was a big Action Comics collector, but even he sort of got out of it, and he's looking to sell like a big chunk of his collection. Part of what pushed me out of it was something I don't blame the comic book companies for at all, which is that they don't do continuing series anymore. Everything is everything is a yearly. You very rarely get I was told recently that we'll basically never see issue 13 of a comic, or very rarely, until the comic book business model changes again significantly, because it creates sort of a lockout where if you pick up a comic book and it's like issue 900 or something, then it's very intimidating to people who are getting into that comic, because they feel like this 899 issues that they have to catch up on to read it, when in reality, like, comic book companies tend to repeat the same like 3 or 4 stories like every 10 years or so, and it really isn't as complicated as it sounds like, and they reboot periodically anyway. So like I used to collect comic books to be a collector. I used to get all the major issues. I used to get all the like centennials and all the 25 issues and all the foil covers of like interesting books, or like books of historical note. Like the one where Tony Stark got AIDS, to match the fact that the AIDS plague had reached like a high degree of public knowledge back in the 90s. So I picked that one up. I picked up The Death of Superman, of course. What else? I always tried to get my hands on the new X-Men, but that was expensive even back then in the 80s and 90s, so I was never able to get my hands on one. The one where the first one with the new team, the reboot of X-Men after with Storm and Wolverine and Nightcrawler, etc.
I think the only one of any real historical note I have in terms of events was probably going to be the death of the second Green Goblin, Harry Osborn.
Okay.
Yeah, like obviously I collect Transformers, but really only from when IDW started publishing them, and I also collect Ninja Turtles from the same company, but I know how bad of a collector I can be. Bad meaning obsessive. Yeah. So because there's so many like variant covers, and I really don't like. I don't want to have to buy bags for all these comics, so I just wait for the hardbound editions. So technically I'm 2 years behind on Transformer comics, but they look really nice because they're like hardcover, and it collects like, let's say, 10 to 20 issues. So I'm getting a bigger bang for my buck. I just have to wait longer to catch up to the story. And in terms of how they do their stories is, I guess I don't really know if I would agree that they do annuals, but I do know when they're starting a new story, let's say, but it's still nice that they continue some of the old stuff. And this might just be because I've kind of started them from the beginning, whereas I'm sure that Marvel and DC does it as well. But again, that's why I only collect Transformers and Ninja Turtles. I know that if I started another series, I'd get way too obsessive, and I choose not to.
Yeah, and I was going to say another perk of the hardbound books is that even if you did get bags for each issue, they're still really easy to damage, even in storage, with accidental folding or whatever. Yeah.
Whereas like these hardcovers, I just put on my bookshelf, and they look nicer than if I just had tons of single issues.
Yeah, like a milk crate or one of those like specific long boxes for comic books.
This was always the paradox of collecting comic books, in that like, so when the Death of Superman, which is one of the first like really big collector craze books that sold out from like every national comic shop, you know, immediately, and had like several printings. It came in this like black plastic bag with a big red S over it. And so if you wanted to have a pristine copy, you'd have to get two. You'd have to get one not to open, one to read, you know, if you wanted to read it. But like even if you put the black plastic one in a bag with a backboard, the black plastic supposedly it was not intended to house that comic book for 50 years. It would degrade, and like the black supposedly, or the part of the polystyrene or whatever it was made out of, would seep into the comic book and like degrade it over time within the bag. So like it was almost a Sisyphean quest to keep your Death of Superman comic book pristine if you're planning on selling it, you know, in 20, 30 years.
You would ironically preserve it better if you tore open the packaging.
I remember at the time, like, they were really mean about it too, because if you paid attention to the Return of Superman storyline, that whole chain, one of the parts of the storyline, the canonical parts of the 20-part Rebirth of Superman storyline after the death of Superman, was in a random issue of Green Lantern that they didn't really heavily advertise, because Green Lantern was like heavily involved in that storyline because Coast City was destroyed during the Return of Superman. That was what led to Hal Jordan becoming Parallax, and the 0 Hour, if you've heard of that, the event in DC Comics, which is one of their major like the next multi-crossover. So they were basically passing the baton to the Green Lantern for their next big crossover event. And if you didn't read the books or read a few obscure advertisements and things like Wizard Magazine, you'd never know that was part of the storyline, and because of that, it was heavily under-ordered by comic book stores. And so, like, collecting things like major crossovers, like, it's worse now, because, especially for Marvel and DC, like, their entire business model revolves around the ancillary books for these crossovers they do every year. Like, every book orbits around this major event. And this year, it's particularly notorious because there's all this controversy about, like, the Marvel storyline, which started with, like, Captain America turning out to be an agent of Hydra, which made people really mad, because it implies that, like, Captain America, you know, the iconic Nazi puncher, was actually a Nazi. Yeah. And then they double down on it, because, like, apparently in the Marvel universe, like, we never won World War II. We just used the cosmic cube to make it look like we did, and then we left the Holocaust in. Like, that's the current storyline.
What?
like who the hell thought this was a good idea? Like, who the hell thought that this was, like, a good way to use, like, Captain America, you know, the creation of two Jewish, you know, American immigrants, like, to be, like, the quintessential Nazi puncher, to create a storyline where we had World War II, you know, and we lost, but then we had the chance to wish it away, and we left in 6 million Jews dying.
Yeah,
like, how stupid do you have to be, especially based on the current American political climate, to think that's a good storyline to put out?
Yeah. Actually, I mean, even regarding ancillary comics, though, I'm thinking the one major event that took up multiple comics that I collected was Maximum Carnage, because I remember I picked up, like, issue 3 because I just thought the cover art looked cool. I was like, oh, Spider-Man's fighting Venom. And then I was like, oh, this is part 3 of a series? Okay. And over several months, just going to comic shows, I was able to eventually finish it up. But, like, man, there is no rhyme or reason to how those things work, because it's not like, it's not like, let me collect Maximum Carnage #1. Where's Maximum Carnage #2? It is not like that at all. It's like Spectacular Spider-Man, like 150 is Maximum Carnage #1, and, like, Web of Spider-Man 78 is #2. Like it is insane. They're jumping over all sorts of Spider-Man series, and not to mention, because it's such a big crossover event, it's like you'll have weird little interactions between, like, other characters. Like, Black Cat sees Venom, and she's like, oh geez, like, I haven't seen him since the time, like, he picked the fight, like, since I picked the fight with him and he, like, broke my nose. And then it's like, you know, go read whatever the hell issue that was to find out what that means. Like, I can't stand when they do that. Like,
Sometimes they would have a footnote in the dialogue box, and they would say, you know, intrepid Marvel explorers, please read this comic book.
No, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, I mean, they tell you where it is, but, like, come on, man. Like, it just drives me crazy, where it's like, you know, by the time I finish the entire Spider-Man storyline, if I want to learn everything that's happened to everybody, I'll be picking up Daredevil comics. Like, it's like what you said with Green Lantern. It's just like, here, go pick up a series that isn't even Superman to, like, get this. It's like, oh, geez.
I will say that Maximum Carnage, since you brought it up, had one of my favorite cliffhangers of all time. So part of the Maximum Carnage storyline was like the riots that Carnage was causing, and like the fact that he had someone Shriek as one part of his like entourage in his supervillain ensemble who had the ability to like incite riots, basically. And so like there were characters like Iron Fist that were like his part in the storyline was just to calm the riots. He would just stand in the middle of people and his like aura would calm them down. And a lot of it was psychological warfare. Like Carnage is really hard to kill, right? Like they learned that the Carnage symbiote was inside his host's blood now, so a lot of the previous techniques they used to beat him weren't working anymore. So
you can't blow the suit off of him.
Like Spider-Man has always had this interplay where he's always dealing with the burden of his responsibility. That's what his character is based around. Ever since the original, like the death of Uncle Ben. That's the whole point. With great power comes great responsibility. So what made the series so compelling to me, there was an episode where there was an issue where it finally became too much for Spider-Man. And I was reading this when it came out monthly, so you'd buy like 3 or 4 parts, that would come out in a week, and then you'd have to wait a month for the next bunch of issues to come out. And so right near the end of the storyline, it was our hero's darkest hour, and like all of his allies in this story had been beaten, and Spider-Man was like laying on the ground. He was like depressed. He couldn't take it anymore. He didn't know how to beat Carnage. He thought it was too much for himself. And the very last panel of that episode is like out of nowhere, fucking Captain America is just like standing over him, being like, "Hey, it looks like you could use some help." And as a kid, as a 10 or 11-year-old kid reading the storyline, I was like, this is like God himself had come down from the heavens and said that he's going to take this away from Spider-Man for a little bit. And like, I couldn't wait for the next week. I was like, you're gonna make me wait a month to find out what happens.
As far
like,
as
see
I know,
Captain...
there was literally. No, I was just gonna say, as far as I know, there was literally nothing telegraphing Captain America's appearance either. He's just like
exactly.
That's literally what you turn and I think it was a double splash page too, so you couldn't see him in advance. So you turn the page and there he is. And it's just like, oh my god. And by the way, regarding the Iron Man thing, regarding his aura calming people down, that was actually
Iron Fist.
Not Iron Man, Iron Fist. That was actually a really cool scene because his whole deal is that his whole life has been dedicated to like the philosophies of martial arts and everything like that. So it shows him, it's not like he just walks between people and they stop, like that would be a little hokey, but it shows him like going into a deep meditative state and then sitting down and then just like really, like there are multiple panels and I think possibly even a couple pages dedicated to him like really pushing this aura of calmness. And the part that I kind of liked was they finished it off with a little bit of a punchline where it actually does relax a lot of the people in the riots. And Spider-Man's like, wow, like that was a really cool trick. Like, how long would it take me to learn something like that? And Iron Fist is like about 20 years. It's like, yeah, pretty much.
Well, Spider-Man's not that old. He could do it.
Yeah, I guess.
So yeah, that's my crossover story. The only other cliffhanger I can think of that I really liked was X-Men 2099, where like half the obviously it takes place in the far future. There's a whole line of Marvel comics took place like in the year 2099 when all the old heroes were dead and gone. But you always kind of wanted to know like are any of them still left alive, and are they going to make appearances in their respective comic books? And so in the X-Men 2099 comic, like, because of Bishop, the character who came from the future after all the X-Men had been assassinated, you knew, like, something big was going to happen in the future, that one of the X-Men was going to turn traitor and kill off all the other X-Men. And that was still a storyline they had never really explored in detail in the comic books. So the fact that, like, this series took place in 2099, when I think Gambit was still supposed to be alive, like, he was the one who told Bishop about the X-Traitor, and, like, you were always going to wonder, like, are we going to find out what happened to the traitor, or are we going to meet Gambit? And there's one issue of the comic that ends with a shadow that looks exactly like Archangel, like, against the moon. Huh. And you have to wait a month to see what that was. And, like, I couldn't wait. Like, I couldn't wait to buy the issue. I, like, snuck into comic book shop before I had the money to buy the issue, and I like looked at the first page and I saw fucking Archangel on it, and I was like, yes.
That's super cool.
And then
you gotta love that
actually,
payoff.
And then I actually bought the book, and it was just a fucking hologram. It wasn't Archangel at all. I was like, I got trolled so expertly.
That's so
by this
good.
book.
It's the crossovers I'm looking for, and again, because I'm 2 years behind with the Transformers, is IDW is currently doing a crossover of all of their series, or most of their series.
That's cool.
It's Transformers, G.I. Joe, Mask, ROM, Micronauts.
Oh, they're bringing back ROM.
Yeah, and so they brought back a lot of these series just for this one crossover, and it was interesting. I heard it was only an okay crossover, but I really hope they do it, because I wouldn't mind there being Mask figures again, like in toy stores.
You mean like the old school, like the thing the Jim Carrey movie was based off of, like The Mask?
No, Mask. So I forget what Mask stands for.
Because Mask was a comic at first.
Actually, Mask was a cartoon first. And it's
sorry, I'm
the
talking
Jim
about
Carrey
the
one.
Yeah, The Mask was a comic first.
So Mask is like G.I. Joe. So basically, they're an elite force who actually, at least in the comics now, they found a transformation cog from a Transformer. So, sorry, let me start over again. Mask in the cartoon were people who wore masks, and they had cars that could turn into other vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
That was like their shtick. And the bad guys were called Venom. And again, that stands for something too, because everything had to stand for something back in the day.
Yep.
And in the current story, the way that happens is there's a section of G.I. Joes who finds a Transformers cog and puts it in a car, which allows them to transform their cars into planes or bikes into whatever else they want to. And it goes from there. But it's just cool how they're bringing this back. And there's rumors that they're going to do that with their cinematic universe too, which, not that the Transformers movies are good, they're okay if not bad. Same with the G.I. Joe movies. They're fun though. But I really look forward to seeing crossover movies with all those universes.
That'd be interesting
on the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't follow either, and I'd still consider watching that.
Yeah, actually, I would. I would also watch Unicron in the Transformers, even if it was.
Actually, I think Unicron might be in the next movie. I've heard rumors of that.
Really? I mean, I saw the thing in the trailer where it's like a looks like a bunch of apple cores stuck together eating the moon or something. If that's Unicron, then I might be a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, it's like Galactus. He's a purple cloud. What?
There's been a lot of parts in the Transformers movies that I'm like, oh, like the Constructicons. I'm like, that's what they turn into? That's dumb.
Actually, speaking of which, you know what really got me? It turns out that it was just an error, and they fixed it for Transformers 2. But do you like the only Transformer movie I've actually seen? The Michael Bay ones was the first one, and I remember there's a part, again, this was corrected, it was just a mistake, but I didn't know that going in, when the Decepticons were first rolling out and reporting, and the like Devastator checking in, and it was just some tank, and I'm like, what? No. But yeah,
well, to be fair, if it's really terrible, like the original Deadpool in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they might, take a mulligan if the reception is really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I've tried to ignore everything I know about Transformers when watching those movies, and parts of it still grate me. Like, I think the two things that annoyed me the most in the fourth movie, one was the excessive use of sponsorship.
Oh, I heard about that, yeah.
And two was, I mean, I don't know if this was meant to be like this, but it's kind of racist. Especially because one of the Transformers... First of all, Drift is not one of my favorites, but he's a pretty cool Transformer. And he has, I guess you could say, some Japanese motifs, meaning that he has the sun on his car. That's it. Like the flag. But in the movie, he turns into a samurai, and he talks with a Japanese accent. And it's like very heavy-handed. On the nose there.
I thought like the two deformed Transformers in the second movie that turned like a truck or something were like also extremely racist characters.
That was too.
Skids and Mudflap. That was like,
yep.
I don't know if anyone in the theater would have been comfortable watching that. Like, it's just like, really.
I mean, like, overall, they're not bad movies, but there's this little things that aren't even related to my dislike of how they're treating the lore. I didn't really want to say that, but how they're treating all that. There's still little things. I mean, I have a feeling I'll watch 5 and I'll probably say it's okay, but I kind of want a good Transformers movie. But I don't think I'm going to get that for a while.
You know what I would like is a Transformers movie where when the robots fight each other, you can see what the hell's going on and know who they are. Like, I know Optimus Prime has a little bit of red and blue, but like everything is just swarms of gunmetal gray, and I'm like, I don't like. I guess I'll see who wins when the fight's over. Like, I don't know what I'm looking at. It's really frustrating. Like, it's such gorgeous CGI, and I can't tell what the hell's going on, like, at all. And it's not like, oh man, if only the camera were handled better, or like, oh geez, you guys moved weird. Like, this entire thing was programmed, and you made it so I can't tell what the hell's going on. It's just really frustrating.
Yeah, I agree. I actually haven't seen any of the Transformer movies. I like the Fast and the Furious movies. If they were actually decent, I would consider watching them as a marathon sometime in the near future. But since like every Transformer movie since the first one has been sort of decried as less well made than that very first movie, I might just watch the first one and be done with it.
And honestly,
the first one actually wasn't that bad.
I'm the minority here, but I wasn't even a fan of the first one, and apparently that was like as good as it got. I'm like, oh boy. People were furious about the second movie, and I'm like, well, guess I'm not watching that one then, and that's where I stopped.
I feel the same way about like every Final Fantasy game, right? Like every single game in the series, someone thinks it's amazing and someone thinks it's the worst game ever, so like you'll never get it.
And same goes with every single Zelda game, except for Breath of the Wild. Every new Zelda game is god-awful, and when the next Zelda game comes out, it's like, oh, that one was actually the best one. It's like, what?
Yeah.
like Majora's Mask, man, like all of a sudden it's like the secret best Zelda game the whole time, but like nobody liked it when it came out because like this time travel mechanic is bullshit. Yeah.
I mean, I remember Wind Waker taking a lot of heat for the cell shading mechanic, and now all of a sudden, like I met the people who grew up on that game and thought it was the best game ever. You know, like I hang out with a lot of people who are younger than me, like my wife's sisters.
No, you know, I will say this about Wind Waker, that the first, like, you know, after, oh geez, Wind Waker was before Twilight Princess, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that means Wind Waker was after, I guess the first GameCube game was after Majora's Mask. So I remember like first seeing concepts for the next Zelda game, and it was like just this really cool looking realistic Link fighting Ganondorf. Like I guess they were just using Ocarina of Time concepts, but it looked like now it's with GameCube quality. It was just stills, but I'm like, this looks insane. And when I saw screenshots of Wind Waker, I was pissed for weeks. Like I was just like, I'm not gonna play the damn game. I refuse. And my brother bought the game because, you know, he wanted to play it. And when I finally actually played it, I did immediately like the game. Like I still don't like that Link's eyes are like somehow bigger than his entire head, but like that game's freaking great. Like I can't argue with that.
I mean, Nintendo
that was
is
like
the one...
me with Final Fantasy 12. I saw one of my roommates play it in college, and I'm like, this game is dumb. It's just a single-player MMO. What's the point? And when they have like the opening dialogue, like every other letter is capitalized because it's an important word, and I'm like, this is so silly. What the hell's going on here? And then eventually I sat down to play it. I'm like, this is actually not that bad of a game.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you were the first... Before I played Final Fantasy 13, the only thing we really knew about it was the JonTron video where they make fun of the game for being a long hallway.
Yeah.
And Pyro, you were the first person I met who like actually really liked the game and like platinumed it and explained to me in detail why it was so fun. I went back and played it. And I haven't beaten it yet, but I thought it was pretty fun. Regarding the Wind Waker thing, Nintendo is the one company where if they do something really weird and divergent, I can understand there's probably something that came up during the development game or during the conception of the game that made me believe there was a good reason to do it for what they were trying to do, or like a strong creative vision behind it, and it wasn't change for the sake of change. Like, to bring it back to the original topic, I remember there being a controversy during the creation of after the trailer of the first Transformers movie that like Michael Bay used a long-nosed truck for Optimus Prime when the original Optimus Prime was a flat-nosed truck. And he's well, well, we want the transition from the real tape film truck to the CGI transformer to be as smooth as possible, and this is the biggest truck that we could get, otherwise it would look really bad. You know, and that's a creative decision that I can understand, that they were trying to make the film look as good as possible. Like, some of the stuff they did after that doesn't make any sense to me. A lot of the time when they change things for the sake of change, it's really why, part of why people complain, you know, when, like, regarding, like, the whitewashing of actors and things like that, because if it indicates the director of the film didn't spend a lot of time thinking about their casting choice, then there's a good chance they didn't understand the theme of the thing they're remaking, and that it will be kind of hollow. Like, sometimes you can tell, like the Death Note series.
Yeah.
You know, there's an interesting story you can tell with a white protagonist, but if the change is arbitrary, then that person might not understand what kind of story the original Death Note was about. Actually, you know, and the new one wouldn't be any better.
Actually, you know what baffles me is when it doesn't even have to do with theme, and like, if you held a gun to my head, I couldn't tell you why they made the change. Like, for example, you know the Silent Hill movie, which, as far as a video game movie goes, that's almost as good as it gets. It's still flawed, but like,
I would say Mortal Kombat is the best.
Mortal Kombat is probably the best. The funny explanation I heard about that is well, the funny thing about that is that movie is schlock, but so is the game it's based on. So, like, what did you think was going to happen? With Silent Hill, though, I would honestly put Silent Hill in second place for video game movies, at least of the ones I've seen. But the thing with this, it just baffles me, is, Pyro, I know you've seen Silent Hill 1. OldManStompy, have you seen Silent Hill 1?
I have not seen the Silent Hill movies.
Alright, well, the basic idea is you're playing as Harry, and like they changed the main character in the movie to a woman because I guess the audience can't understand the concept of a father loving a daughter that much. That's some bullshit, but at least at least I understand, like, you're wrong, but I see where you're coming from, you know? But the part that I really can't understand is that the daughter that you're trying to save is in the game is named Cheryl. Cheryl. In the movie, it was Sharon. And it's like, why? You know, and like, this is the kind of thing where people who know the game are going to be like, well, why the hell did you change it? And people who don't know the game aren't going to understand, like, they're not going to be aware that there was any kind of significant change. They're like, okay, Sharon's her name, I guess. Like, could they not accept Cheryl? Would that have been a problem? Like, that's not even, like, a big deal of a change, you know? You could do worse changes than that, but, like, what the hell was the thought? Like, why? Why did you even? Why did you need to do that? It's just like, it bothers me because it's so small. It's like, it didn't need to happen. Like, why is it here? Yeah, that was it.
No, I wanted to give that one time to breathe because you were really on a roll there.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know. Like, I don't like the name Cheryl. Let's do one that sounds like it, but nobody would care except the people who know the game, who will be mad about the change. It's like, so who is this for? Yeah.
So, like, I remember Kevin Smith, when he made Jersey Girl, he made an explicit quote saying this movie was not for critics. And, like, so what does that mean? The movie is bad and you don't care? And like, we're all just supposed to see the movie?
No, I mean, I think I get the idea. It's not for these stuffy guys in a board office judging movie, but everyone's a critic.
Well, I know we talked about the Marvel crossover a little bit a while ago, but, like, that was their response. They were like, I promise there'll be a good payoff. You know, please finish reading our series to the end, and we promise you won't be disappointed. And it's like, what do they care after that? They have all your money, so why do they care if you feel resolved by the narrative of the new Secret Empire storyline? Like, they'll just do something else after that. And if people were stupid enough to believe it the first time, they'll probably be stupid enough to believe it the next time. You know? That's pretty frustrating. That's
actually kind of funny. I didn't think about that because it was like, oh, there's gonna be a good payoff, but yeah, that does get you to just buy the books, doesn't it? Like, got me there.
Yep. I mean, like a lot, like for WWF, a lot of the time the storylines have no real payoff. But I've already paid my $9.99 for the subscription to the internet streaming service. Yeah. So the only thing I can do at that point is cancel my subscription, but after a storyline ends and a new one starts, that's the only time I feel hopeful, right? So, like, yeah, that's the part I don't want to miss.
That's how they get you. Time to, like, share somebody else's WWE online account.
Well, I mean, it's an online streaming service. So if you were really invested in it, you could, it's the internet. You can find out how to get it from the free internet store. We don't like telling people to do that, but it's not like you couldn't.
Yeah, I mean that is the thing. I mean, like, you should fund the people that you're patronizing, but like, but yeah, I mean, you don't want to support their dick moves either.
Like that's the issue that like every major company that has a streaming service, like the comic industry, like the wrestling industry, like most sports industries, is that they're most video game companies, they're competing with the ability to get their games for free, and they're fighting the legal battles over it. But like that's the barrier they have to overcome. And it's part of how the industry got structured the way it is.
Well, honestly, what I find interesting about this is that I know I've discussed this with the people who are on this podcast before, but I forgot if it was on the podcast. But unless things are super expensive and you like really don't want to pay that much for it, outside of that context, the real winner seems to be convenience. Like if you let me click and then I have it, I will give you my money. Like I don't want to jump through hoops of bullshit. Like I've seen this in different ways. Like, for example, I've seen on Steam, this is before they gave you the refund option. At this point, people would have refunded. But there was some indie game that looked kind of interesting, but when you bought it and downloaded it, you also had to sign up for, like, something other than Steam, Like, like, how when you buy Dead Space 3, you need to sign up for an Origin account, and it's like, dude. So, like, one of the comments in the reviews for that game was, like, sees that I have to sign up for another service, like cancel, like uninstall, remove game from my list of games. And it's like, the guy actually paid for it, and he's like, no, fuck it and fuck you. So like, and the same thing goes for convenience. Like EA's latest Sim City, I say latest, it's several years old now, but this game got notorious for forcing online, even though it was exclusively single player, because EA was just being dicks. And this led to piracy, not because we didn't want to pay for your game. We were going to pay for it. But, like, all I want to do when I buy your game is just be able to play it. Maybe I can't do multiplayer if I don't have online, but let me play your fucking offline single-player game. It's like, it's a matter of principle. People pirate not because they're jerks, but because, like, honestly, sometimes because the producers are jerks. But, like, most of the time because, like, it's the easier option. That's the reason Crunchyroll is so successful. It's like, pay me some subscription, and here's a ton of anime you don't have to find separate torrents for. It's like, wow, okay, I will happily pay you however much for, like, all this anime in one package. It's so easy, something like that. So, like, I guess WWE does have that, but I mean, if it still leaves a bad taste in your mouth, that's another story.
I recently found out that one of the major, like, torrent sites for anime porn became a site that actually wanted to make their own pornographic anime. That's and they now have a paywall because so many people, because their name had become so synonymous with getting hentai, that they were, like, working with what they called, like, the father of Japanese tentacle porn to, like, make their own manga.
What? Okay.
Like, this is not how I expected this story to go at all.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
It reminds me a little bit of like the modern Exceed like philosophy, that they've moved to becoming almost self-aware and like self-indulgent in some of the like obscure like the Senran Kagura series and the Akiba's Beat series.
Yeah, the really like, cheap cheesecake. They're like, yeah, we know. And honestly, their reputation, I think, increases because of it. Like, they're not embarrassed by their own product. It's like, here you go, man. Like, this is what you want. We know. Like, we're giving you an option to buy it in English. Have fun.
Yeah. I'm not sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a thing, and
yeah,
it's a market forces at work.
Yeah. And honestly, sometimes I've actually seen where the taboo is the selling point. Like, I've seen that. I can think of this twice. One of them is a game, it's like Senran Kagura. I saw it on Rice Digital, because Rice Digital has really cool physical exclusives for its games, but, like, only through their site, and they're UK based, so enjoy that shipping. But they had whatever, like, Valkyrie something, but it was some Vita game that was like Senran Kagura, only I think a little more risque, and one of their
Valkyrie Drive.
Valkyrie Drive.
Valkyrie Drive.
Okay, well, one of their advertisement points for it was that the game was banned in Germany, which I find hilarious. They're like, can't get it in Germany, like, want to see what that's all about? And the other thing I can think of that capitalized on the taboos, I mean, this is, it's Duke Nukem Forever. Now, this is before, I mean, I still haven't played it, but apparently it was, like, okay, you know, after all the hype. But what really killed me was I was at a PAX East. It might have been the first one I went to, in fact, in, like, 2012. But the Duke Nukem Forever was coming out soon, so it had, like, a big booth. And one of the things that really freaking slayed me is that within the booth, there's, like, this obnoxious, like, golden throne that you could sit on and get your picture taken of. It was, like, really cool. And it had, like, the hot girls posing with you because it indulges in that kind of stuff. But the part I thought was hilarious was on the outside wall of the booth was this giant ESRB, like, reasons it's rated M for mature. Like, it has swearing, it has violence, it has drugs, it has... It was this like, that was the selling point. Like, that was basically the game's poster, was the reasons your parents should not buy this for you. It was hilarious.
It's an interesting game of, like, brinkmanship, right? Because you have to make your game offensive enough to get a really long list of objections from the ESRB, but not offensive enough that it gets, like, an adults-only rating.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, though. Like, it's all the harder now with Mortal Kombat and Duke Nukem, because back in the 90s when they came out, the concept of, like, I'm gonna kick your ass in a game, like, that was super edgy. And now we know Duke Nukem is being edgy. And, like, Mortal Kombat, any kind of violence was, like, it was these mocap-looking figures, and it's like, oh, man, blood exists, and some of these fatalities look kind of nasty. Like, and now we know them as these edgy games. So what do you do in 12, 13, 14? Like, now Mortal Kombat is violent to the point of being legitimately difficult to watch sometimes, and Duke Nukem had to go, like, to 11 with its not that violent, but like, just generally offensive and distasteful content. It's just so, and that they had to remind you, I mean, we remember why you like these games. Yeah.
Like, maybe the answer is people should just make good games and not... Like, if you're selling the game on the spectacle, maybe your game isn't really that good.
Yeah, I mean,
like...
Mortal Kombat did end up being good, but, like, they had to remind us, like, yes, we are edgy by modern standards. Duke Nukem Forever, from what I hear, definitely did that, but apparently it's just an okay game, and it, like... It gives you, like, Halo armor, where you, like, regenerate health, and it's like, wait a minute, that's not how Duke Nukem played. And, like, a two-weapon loadout... A fucking two-weapon loadout in Duke Nukem where every weapon is ridiculous, and it's like, all right, well. But like, at least on their premises, their selling points, I thought was really amusing. Like, the risque quality was the selling point.
Yeah. Well, anyway, like, within this discussion, we've seen several topics that could easily serve for an entire, like, large question for CorCon, or, like, an entire topic for Recon. So, like, I'd be happy to hear from our listening audience if they'd like to hear longer form discussions on things like piracy or things like changes to major movie franchises.
Or hentai.
Yeah, or the father of tentacle porn, I guess.
Well, we'd have to do some private research, but I guess...
private research.
But
on that note...
Yeah, so outside of... Father of tentacle porn. So we have, I think, had a fulfilling discussion this week. So please remember to subscribe to the Corrective Consciousness YouTube and SoundCloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs up, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. It helps us promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement keeps the show going. You can also catch us on Tuesday for our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the podcast about our lives in pop culture. Finally, remember... There's no possible way you're going to find Vice the Bold at Vice the Bold on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, and Twitter. The good news is you can find me, called Lotus Prince on YouTube, and at Lotus Prince, all one word, on Twitter.
And you can find me as PyroJackFrost on places that I'm on the internet on.
And you can find me as OldManStompy basically everywhere I want to be found. You can also email me at lotusprince@lotusprince.com.
Yeah.
That is not a joke. I do.
I was just about to ask.
And that...
That's hysterical.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Lotus Prince, and this is my email.
That is probably the only response. I haven't actually set it up yet, but it probably should only have an automated response that says exactly what you mentioned right now.
My name is Lotus Prince, and this is my email. Just no signature or anything.
Yep. Well, I guess that's what I'll work on tomorrow.
Perfect.
For the website. Continuity.
Totally legit. All right, so once again, this was a really entertaining discussion. Thank you all for listening. Until next time, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers.